the year 500 BCE, high up in an ancient cemetery located in the freezing Pamir Mountains on the western edge of China. The air at this altitude is incredibly thin and freezing cold. A group of mourners is standing silently around a stone tomb. There is no loud crying. Someone steps forward, carefully picking up red-hot stones and placing them into a wooden brazier. Then, they sprinkle a handful of crushed, dried leaves and branches onto the intensely radiating stones. Smoke begins to rise. The smoke swirls, drifting across the narrow space of the cemetery, enveloping the people standing there. More than 2,000 years before modern drug culture was born, these people stood beside the dead and deeply inhaled into their lungs the smoke of a plant that they knew well had the ability to alter the mind. Most of us, when thinking about smoking cannabis, often associate it with very modern images: a paper-rolled joint, pipes, or a group of rebellious youths in street culture. But the truth about the origin of smoking cannabis is much stranger and darker than that. The oldest and most solid evidence we have does not come from a tavern, a bustling market, or a rebel movement. It comes from the archaeology of death. The initial use of cannabis was not a recreational pastime, but a spiritual ritual tied to ancient tombs, red-hot stones, and an atmosphere thick with smoke. So ultimately, when did humans actually start smoking cannabis? Not when they first grew it or used it to weave rope, but the exact moment they purposely burned it to inhale its psychoactive smoke. To understand this, we have to go back in time, returning to an era when smoking looked nothing like anything we see today. Before going any further, if you enjoy questions that overturn all preconceptions and buried historical stories, please take a second to hit the like button and subscribe to the Why So channel. Your support helps in-depth research videos like this go much further. Now, let us return to the starting point. To have smoke, first there must be the plant. Cannabis has a history intertwined with humanity from long before evidence of smoking it appeared. According to a large-scale genomic study in 2021, the cannabis plant, or Cannabis sativa, was most likely first domesticated in the early Neolithic period in East Asia, which is about 10,000 to 12,000 years ago. But remember this carefully. Those early farmers did not grow cannabis to get high. They grew it for survival purposes. The cannabis plant, also known as hemp, is an incredibly versatile plant. Its fibers are extremely tough, perfect for weaving into rope and fabric. Its seeds are full of oil and nutrition and can be used as food. For thousands of years, this plant was simply an essential household item, just like wheat or linen. But then, humans began to move. The Inner Asia region in ancient times was not an empty wilderness. It was a massive trade network, where mountains and steppes were the highways for nomadic people. They brought with them seeds, brought with them culture, and even brought religious beliefs. A plant initially used only to make rope when brought to a new environment could turn into medicine, into a symbol, into incense, or into a hallucinogenic substance. The mechanism of this change happened in a very clear chain of cause and effect. Step 1. Cannabis is a useful plant, growing everywhere. Step 2. Most wild or early cultivated cannabis varieties did not contain high levels of THC, the main active ingredient causing hallucinations. Step 3. When humans brought this plant to high mountain regions like the Pamir Mountains, the change began. Scientists have hypothesized that, at high altitudes with harsh weather and strong ultraviolet radiation, the cannabis plant had to defend itself by secreting more resin, and unintentionally, the amount of THC in the plant also skyrocketed. Ancient humans, somehow, discovered this. They realized that this plant growing in the high mountains was no longer just for weaving ropes. When burned, it created a completely different mental state, and so a useful plant turned into a sacred plant. The path to smoking cannabis probably did not start from the need to seek pleasure. It started from the search for meaning. We know this not because of rumors, but thanks to undeniable archaeological evidence. Let us open the wall of evidence. The first and strongest evidence lies exactly in the Jerzankal cemetery in the Pamir Mountains that we mentioned at the beginning of the video. Here, archaeologists found wooden braziers containing charred stones. When they scraped the residue on these stones and took it into the laboratory, the result returned was CBN, a type of compound produced when THC breaks down over time. This is the most direct and clear evidence showing that humans around the year 500 BCE purposely burned cannabis with high THC content in mourning rituals. But that is not all. If we go back in time a bit further, about 2,475 years ago, at the Yanghai tombs in Xinjiang, archaeologists found a leather basket and a wooden bowl containing up to 789 grams of cannabis branches, leaves, and fruits. It was not fabric or rope. It was flowers and leaves, carefully harvested and placed next to the dead as a burial item to bring to the afterlife. Subsequent chemical analyses confirmed that this plant mass still retained traces of THC and THC synthesizing enzymes. The ancients knew how to select and preserve the most hallucinogenic parts of the plant. Also in the Turpan region, at the Jiayi cemetery dating from 400 to 800 BCE, people even found 13 cannabis plants neatly arranged to cover the body of the dead like a shroud. Even the burning of cannabis in rituals appeared in completely different civilizations. At the Tel Arad shrine site belonging to the ancient kingdom of Judah, in the 8th century BCE, researchers found remains of THC and CBD on a sacred altar. More interestingly, they discovered that the ancients had mixed cannabis with animal dung. Why? To prevent the cannabis from bursting into flames, but instead smoldering slowly, releasing hallucinogenic smoke that filled the temple space. And finally, written history also speaks up to confirm this. The ancient Greek historian Herodotus, who lived in the 5th century BCE, once recorded a strange custom of the nomadic Scythian people. He described that they crawled under tightly sealed felt tents, then threw hemp seeds and leaves onto red-hot stones. Herodotus wrote that the vapor and smoke rose so thickly that no Greek steam bath could compare, and the Scythians howled like wolves in sheer joy. But this is the strangest part of the story. History is not a straight line where people discover a stimulant and just keep using it. It is the story of how a plant moved across boundaries, from an everyday item becoming a sacred object, then into a mind-altering substance. The tomb at Jerzankal in the year 500 BCE may be the clearest evidence we have found, but almost certainly it was not the first time this happened. Archaeology is actually very unfair to smoke. Smoke dissipates into the air, wood rots away, rituals only leave faint fragments. What we found in Pamir, in Xinjiang or at Tel Arad, is just a small spark, flashing from a much deeper and vast history, where humans knew how to use smoke to connect with the divine thousands of years earlier. When looking at the bigger picture, humans do not simply consume a plant. We give it a role. Cannabis in fiber form belongs to daily life. But cannabis that creates hallucinogenic smoke belongs to the spiritual world. The braziers on the peaks of the Pamir Mountains open up a larger story about humanity, how we use altered states of mind to face grief, memory, fear, healing, and the desire to converse with the deceased. The real question is not just what cannabis is, but which moment of human life the ancients believed cannabis belonged to. In short, if one must answer precisely, the most direct, clear, and solid evidence currently available for humans, inhaling hallucinogenic cannabis smoke appeared around the year 500 BCE in the Pamir Mountains. Earlier sites show that people knew how to use cannabis in rituals, even burning it on altars. But Jerzankal is where the evidence of inhaling smoke becomes undeniable. Not a modern-day recreational habit, but a sacred ritual of ancient times. Let us return to the tomb on the peak of the Pamir Mountains in the first scene. Now, you will see that smoke completely differently. It is no longer an anonymous, mysterious smoke. It is the evidence of a transitional moment in human history, when a plant crossed the boundary of material utility, stepping into the world of consciousness. That stone tomb, wooden brazier, and red-hot stones now act as a hinge, connecting two worlds, the world of the living and the world of the dead. The strangest thing is perhaps not that the ancients found a way to alter the mind, but that they seemingly only did so in places where life felt most fragile, on high mountain peaks, next to cold tombs, in moments when the boundary between this world and the next was no longer solid. The things we still think are completely fixed, from a plant species, a habit, to even taboos, turn out to perhaps just be the shape of time wearing a human disguise. Think about that. If you find this historical journey fascinating enough, do not forget to subscribe to the Why So channel and leave a like. Continue to accompany us to decode the strange truths behind the most familiar habits of humanity.